record. There I am. I'm recording. I'm going to talk about improvising. And so I saw on Facebook there was Musical U, and they had a course for like $40 that was talking about music, and it's a 6-week course, and I do one lesson a week. And they were first talking about improvising, and they're actually doing some real basic stuff before that, but I think it's going to be helpful for me because I really in high school didn't take band, so I never got as much music lessons. In junior high, I took a music appreciation class, but I think it's going to help me out. But this improvising stuff sounds a little interesting to me. So improvising, they say, is scary. And so that's why we probably don't do it as well. And so when you're doing music improvisation, we don't do it as well because we're afraid of making mistakes. And it's they have a language analogy. You know English, but if you couldn't improvise in English, you'd have to stay only with rote sentences that you remembered, like, how are you, good morning, oh, thank you, and that sort of thing. But in English, we improvise all the time, but if we make mistakes, we don't care because we're going to make mistakes when we're talking English, and it's not a big deal. But in music, it's a big deal. You feel that the notes and pitches, they're wrong. They can be right, they can be wrong. When you're playing a note at the wrong time, you have made a mistake, and mistakes are something to avoid and regret, and you work hard to prevent them in the future. This is great if your goal is to become a perfect music playing robot. Then you can practice things over and over again and make them perfect, but you don't have the freedom of improvising. So once you put music into that right and wrong framework, you can use that freedom and creativity. It means that you're missing out if you aren't improvising. When they use the language analogy, let's see. So you learn sentences and scripts, and that makes it a low risk when you have things memorized. But if you look at the big picture, reading music and tempo, let's see, going to the last one, improvising, you can practice those specific lines and phrases over and over again and get them right. Like in English, you can say, you may think of gin and beer when you're quartered safe out here and your centipede fights and but when it comes to slaughter, you will do your work on water, and you'll lick the bloomin' boots of him who's got it. Now, in India's sunny clime, where I used to spend my time, serving of Her Majesty the Queen. So you can memorize those things, but I'm not being creative. I'm not improvising. So if you do that, and like in the band, we memorize things, we learn things. One advantage of being in the orchestra is that if we make mistakes by the other trumpet players, by the other baritone players, it doesn't stick out as much, especially when we have all those other musical elements going on, but we're not improvising. So to go beyond that, we need to break things into smaller blocks. So I sent you something that is a worksheet to break things into smaller blocks, and they have week 1, week 2, week 3. I think it goes up to week 6. And they start very simple with improvising. And what they say that you want to break these into blocks that fit together, and you can assemble them into your own creation. As a language speaker, that means that sometimes you're going to use the wrong word, say something that doesn't make sense. You have to risk sounding a bit odd. How do you minimize the downside in music when we explore improvising? They say the payoff for taking that scary risk is huge. You get this new freedom, and to create your own ideas and something even bigger. When you study a foreign language, there is that moment that you start instinctively knowing what to say. They didn't say it, but thinking in the language rather than thinking in English. If you're speaking Spanish, you start thinking in Spanish. There was a movie with Clint Eastwood where he stole a Russian jet. And in order for the jet to fire the rockets or do different things, he had to actually think in Russian. Otherwise, he couldn't fire the rockets. If he's going, fire the rockets, no, I have to think in Russian. Or whatever, to fire the Russian rockets. So we start thinking in that language. So when we break this improvisation down into smaller parts, which the worksheets are going to do for us, then we can start getting away from the scariness, but we can also start learning to improvise. Now, embrace I'm having a hard time. Improvise to bring your own creative ideas to life. Come here, kitty. Come here, kitty. This is a cat. She's a good girl. She's very pretty. She likes sitting on my lap. That's Gracie. She was an outdoor cat, and she kept coming at 3 in the morning to get food. So I would sit on the porch, no matter whether it was cold or not. I sat there for about 3 weeks, and she came up and let me pet her. And then I left the door open, and when it rained for a week, this ball, a soaked sponge came jumping on my. And she came back a couple nights, and then she stayed inside. So she's a good girl. I love her. So anyway, we dread making mistake, and you want to shift that mindset. Taking on the improviser's mindset. Notes aren't right or wrong. The only thing that matters is that it sounds good to you. And if something doesn't sound good, it is not the end of the world. I'm going to admit Kathy. So Kathy, well, we'll give her a second.
I'm here.
Kathy. And here's Kitty. This is Gracie. She's a good girl. She's a very good girl.
Oh, so cute.
She wants to sit on my lap. She likes I give her meat loafers and then scrubbies on the head. I give her rubber tummies, but she doesn't like rubber tummies. So, notes, when we're talking about improvising, notes aren't right or wrong. The only thing that matters is it sounds good to you. And if something doesn't sound good, it's not the end of the world or the end of the performance. If you can learn a variety of strategies to use your ears and musical instinct to quickly learn turn any wrong note into something that sounds great. You might even convince your audience that you did it on purpose. Richard used to talk about a jazz player who would play, and if the note was wrong, the next time he played it, in the next sequence, he'd play it wrong again. And then you thought, oh, we meant to do that. So.
Yeah, you ever listen to Miles Davis?
Yeah.
Davis, that's right. Yeah.
So they say making that mindset shift is a critical step in learning to improvise. Even before you fully accept the mistake, that mistakes are there's no such thing as a wrong note when you're improvising. We can reduce, even remove the pain of playing a wrong note by giving yourself an opportunity to play with in a zero risk way. He says the way you can play in a zero risk way is to practice improvising when no one is there to hear you. If no one is listening, then no bad notes or bad rhythms are there. He says it's not quite zero risk because we are always accompanied by our inner voice of doubt. And he says that voice feels shame if you play a wrong note, or if your playing feels less polished than you need it to be. You need to set aside that inner critic, even only for a few minutes. Tell yourself, I'm going to spend a few minutes experimenting, not expecting to be amazing. He says to start small and do things, and don't worry if you make a mistake. Don't be critical. That's harder to say. And not even every note will be amazing. That's how I'm going to spend the next few minutes practice. So we're almost done with improvising. Going into it with that mindset will make your improvising much better and easier. And so I sent you links for this. I sent you a PDF file, which I'm going to share right now. And that PDF file is here. This comes from Musical U. I paid $49 for a 6-week class, which I'll be sharing with you. If it's any good, I might recommend it. So they're talking about improvising, and they give day 1, day 2. So with this one, they say to improvise, the first exercise is with just one note. And they say, start with a middle C. And no, you cannot play octaves. So you can't do a lot with middle C. No, you can experiment. You can do different rhythms. You can play it loud. You can play it soft. You can play it with different articulations. Pitches are not only one dimension of music. There are also rhythm, dynamics, articulation, form, structure, phrasing, and more. So to practice this, and they say to do this like 30 seconds at a time. Try the note C exercise the first time as a series of targeted 30-second dimensional exploration. After that, they say do dynamics, loud and soft. This is actually good practice for a tone on the trumpet. If we play different rhythms, if we play them long notes, and we're playing just, you could do low C, and low C is actually very good for you. Trying not to overblow. They don't say that, and they're not assuming we're playing trumpet. They're assuming you're playing all different instruments, but play with the articulation of the note, connecting the notes, staccato, do different rhythms, long and short notes, modify the patterns, repeat the patterns 5 times, and then after you've repeated them 5 times, change one a little. And change the tempo, play it slow or faster. Then it says call and respond. Pretend that the two C's you're playing are having conversation. One's saying hello, the other one's saying goodbye or saying something else. And so it talks about making a list of different dimensions that you haven't explored yet, moods and emotions, short from your life, moving or game, jot down some key words. These ideas, ideas can be a valuable stimuli for your musical imagination as well. So this week, why don't we all practice a little improvisation, maybe just a little bit every other day, and then we can go on next week. We can go to lesson 2, which talks a little more about, and there's a bonus lesson here. The second day where they do something else, which I haven't looked at it yet. So they say with the improvisation on lesson 1, you can change notes, but you're only playing that one note. So if you play low C, then you can play low B, you can play middle, the regular G, and practice that. So that's improvisation, and screen sharing I turned off. So the pair in the background is from my drawing lesson for my nieces and sister because I'm so bored staying at home. I'm going to post them. I'm probably going to make a drawing by Doug if you want to see the drawing lessons. And it talks about instruments to use, how to draw. This is using a set of different weight pens from the H's E's are softer and they do the darker color, and the two H's, the lighter colors, using a 4B and a 6B for the darker colors on this. So, okay. So let's talk about static tonguing, which is from Brian Davis. He talks about static tonguing. I never heard of static tonguing. Everyone heard of static tonguing?
Nope.
No, never have.
I think maybe he's talking and calling it static because he's just doing it on one note and he's not changing from note to note. Now, when he's doing static tonguing, he says people ask him, okay, do you do da? Do you do ta? Do you do tu? Static tonguing usually uses the das, but he said in a previous lesson that it didn't matter what vowel sound you made because your tongue can still move independently and you can still get the higher notes and the lower notes when we do the exercise with their tongue. And the exercise he did with his tongue was he did from low C I didn't do that right, but that's all right. But then he did it without using his vowel. And going down grammatically. And you have to use your tongue and lower your tongue for that. And I'm not lowering my jaw. And so that one, he's using his tongue. And so he says you don't have to use vowel sound. He's not a big advocate of that because lowering and raising your tongue, if you feel those vowel sounds are important and you're using them, I don't think they're going to, but he likes this static tonguing. He says start in a lower level, flowing. So with his first exercise with this, he does quarter notes, triplets, eighth notes, 16th notes, and then whole note. And he starts with a lower C, and he goes, and he keeps them together just to make sure the airflow is smooth and not interrupted too much. So. And so he's keeping those together, and then he goes down chromatically with that. He says you can actually do that exercise and do all the chromatics without taking your horn down. And he says to do these exercises on a day where you're only doing exercises because it can be very grueling when you're doing these. He says eventually when you, question? Eventually when you get these flowing together, then you can get more to staccato, more separation with the notes, but he wants to make sure that the flow is good. Now, he's using his tongue opposite than what we think of as an attack. He's actually using his tongue to stop the note, which is opposite thinking, if you ask me. But I've been trying to work on that, and it seems like it works. So he says no gaps between the note when you're first trying it. He says he uses usually a da sound. You can, but when you get a little more separation, you can go to ta, da, or ka for double and triple tonguing. Because like triple tonguing is taka 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 da ta taka da 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 ta taka da da. So actually I find triple tonguing a little easier than double tonguing. Double tonguing taka 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 taka, using the front and then the back of your tongue da ka da ka da ka da ka. So he says that he starts with the tenuto style with no gaps. I've never heard of tenuto. Have you heard of tenuto? Anybody? Nope, never heard of tenuto. There was a comedian called Tenuta, but so tenuto means a style where is tied more together. Once he is sure the airstream is not stopping, he applies the same airstream approach to staccato. He tends to use the odd sound da or ta, regardless of the register. He doesn't care if he's in the upper register because his tongue can still arch and get the higher notes. Let's see what else he says. He practices in all registers, practice patterns on all pitches, and he may add quadruplets, sextuplets, septuplets, and 30-second notes. Well, I'm not sure about the 30-second notes, but he says with sextuplets and septuplets, he uses them in so those are sixth and fifth notes and sixth notes. It's like that. Sextuplets, 16th notes and broken into 5. So anyway, he goes from lower C and he goes down to the low F sharp, descending, and then he does ascending, and then he finishes off by going down again to the lower notes to cool down. You need time to practice if you're going to do that and do everything else he does. So I wonder how many hours he practices a day. But he does break things into groups of, and I've been doing it a lot when I'm practicing the music, is for as long as I play, I rest that same amount. And it seems to be really nice to my lips. And again, I'm using the more of the pucker embouchure, which I think is better and safer and less damaging to your lips. Haven't tried the smile embouchure as much. Sometimes does all the sets with all the lowering, without lowering his horn. And he says it's quite challenging. He recommends doing that on a day when he's strictly just practicing and not having a gig or anything else. So that's static tonguing and improvising. So I gave you the PDF on improvising from Musical U. You don't have to pay the $49. I don't know if I'm in trouble with them, but
Don't tell.
I'm kind of promoting them. I don't know if they're good or not. The one thing I don't like about Musical U initially is when I first went in, it wasn't clear when my lessons start, but they open up lessons Monday each week. So then you have a whole week for the lesson. And so they opened it up this Monday, and I started it Wednesday, and I'm going, where are my lessons? They do have times where you can talk to an instructor and ask questions, and you can just log on Wednesdays and Fridays, and there's multiple hours to do that. They give you the lessons that you can practice at your own speed. You don't have to be at the same speed as the other students. They can come in at certain different times. They have places for you to comment. The one thing I think is maybe negative when you first go in, they're kind of upselling. You signed up for the 6-week class, but if you paid $365, you'd have a lifetime membership and you could do this forever. And if your goals are to be really good at reading music, singing, improvising, then you probably should sign up for this class, and we'll give you a discount, $180 if you do it this week. I don't like the upselling as much, especially since I'm broke, and the $40, I said, yeah, I can do the $40 if it's going to help my music. I think one thing that holds me back a little bit is I didn't have that band practicing and music reading. When I was in drum corps, we really played more by ear than even reading music wasn't emphasized. And then we'd play like 4 pieces for the whole season or 6 pieces for the whole season. So you didn't really need to read music as much. So in my case, I think it's a little bit of a shortcoming. And so that's why I'm doing it. But again, if I think it's good, I can recommend it. But I am sharing this improvising with you. I'm switching this to my 55 Chevy. I drew this by ink and then colored it in Photoshop. The background's a picture from Colorado, and this is a picture of concrete I found on the web underneath. but that's my 55 Chevy. It needs a carburetor rebuilt. But other than that, it's still, it has, my grandfather had it. He drove it only on Sundays. He was a minister. And so it was always garaged until I got it. And then now it's garaged again. It has 95,000 miles, original miles on it.
My dad was a Chevy man. Yeah, that takes me back. I remember those. We had a 54.
Yeah, they're nice. The only thing I regret with it, it broke down once in LA and I parked it at a mechanic's. And when I came back to get it after he fixed it, there was a visor here that was on this that made it a little unique, metal visor, and it was gone when I got to the car. And the mechanic said, "Oh, it wasn't there when you parked it." Yeah. So, it's something that I think someone in LA really likes, that visor for their Chevy.
Yeah,
They just kind of tore it out and left holes in the roof, which I had to patch. I think I might be able to find another visor or make one out of fiberglass. But I really like the visor. It just made it a little more unique. Okay, so that's the lesson for today. Did we have any questions?
It was a great lesson.
Well, thank you very much. I think this, actually, I think this musical U is going to be good for me, and I'll keep adding lessons there. But Brian Davis has more lessons too. You kind of missed the one. Oh no, you got the one on static tonguing, but there are other ones that he does on scales and things, and it's not the A through Z, but he's going to do another A through Z soon, and so with different lessons there. So
I took that workshop with the West Wind Brass, and 2 years I did that, and they always had a session that was on improv.
Oh, very good.
They like Miles Davis, and they would show how Miles Davis would take one note, and then it was like arpeggios. He knew the chords that went with that note, and it was just automatic, so that he would play a note and he would know which notes he could play with it, and he just got used to it, and that's all he did. That's all he did. He just play a different note, but all the other stuff that filled in, once you memorize those for each note, you can do that.
And they said with this, when we're doing the C, and they said you could find a piece of music that was in the key of C and play with it, but just play rhythms, I think it was A flat. They said in that booklet, and I'm not sure, but you could find a piece of music and then play with it, and then you could be improvising. But again, this first week we're just doing rhythms, louder notes, but not changing the note at all. And so I think they're starting small and then working up. But I think the idea of playing by yourself and not being afraid to make mistakes, some of that fusion jazz kind of stuff sounds like mistakes to me. But and they don't care. And if the flows, and I think if the beginning note and the end note are in key, then it's okay. And whatever you play in between is okay. So it depends upon, and I'm not big on fusion jazz, but it's interesting to listen to. So certainly knowing your arpeggios and your scales make a big sense. There's a Brian Davis that talks about arpeggios and scales. It's one of his New Year's resolutions. So I'll look at that one next time and I'll apply it. So yeah, if we know those scales, or half scales, I like playing half the scale. You play FAC and then go back down, da 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 da. I like those. They're kind of halfway, and I love the one where you can just do open piston, open piston, open piston, open piston. I'm saying piston because of drum corps. Open first valve, da 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 da. And so I like those.
So now that you've done that, listen to some Miles Davis.
I will. I actually have a few CDs on this one when I think it was Tower Records was going out of business. They had all these CDs for 50 cents, and I bought some Miles Davis and some trumpet and Maynard Ferguson and a few different CDs. So I think I have a couple Miles Davises. So I will listen to that. I don't think Wynton Marsalis improvises, but it's beautiful. So definitely scales there.
He does sometimes, but yeah, he's more classical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
he's a
right. Very
classic
good.
jazz guy.
And that's up. I'm 1 minute over. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to say thank you, everybody. If you know another trumpet player, encourage them. I love doing this, but I think if we had 2 other people or 3 other people, I might as well be spending the time doing this for more people.
Oh, thank you, Doug.
No
We
problem.
appreciate it.
I think it just breaks up my week too, and I enjoy it, but it forces me to study. And I just really haven't studied this stuff on trumpet. And some of the things that Brian Davis said, I go, boy, with the chest high, I really haven't done that at all. And I think it really does make a difference. So,
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
good for
Thank you
me.
very much. I'm going to say
Thank
goodbye.
you.
Thanks, Doug.
Welcome.
Thank